right, welcome everyone. We're about a minute until the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started right when we hit 2 o'clock. All right, so welcome everyone. I promise it's not in focus week, but the main driver for this session was we had some technical issues during one of our workshops, specifically around the manufacturing section. So we wanted to come back, give everyone the opportunity to kind of understand what some of those use cases are, how you can leverage them from a manufacturing perspective. So quickly, just from an agenda perspective, we only have an hour today, but we'll do some quick introductions of who I am. Orchestrator overview will be very quick. And then we're going to jump into some of the main use cases that we're going to be talking about today. So there's 3 specific ones that we're going to be covering, and then any questions based on what we have from a topics perspective. So quick intro, my name's Brian Rose. I've been with Terrellium for about 8 years now. My role from an organizational perspective is I'm a part of our management team, and I also lead our manufacturing team. I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of customers and organizations that are leveraging the new tools and functions inside of JDE, whether it's Orchestrator or Personal Forms or UX1. So have a lot of knowledge in that area, and looking forward to giving you some background and some use cases that I've seen at customers be helpful. So just from a quick tools perspective and orchestrations perspective, so Orchestrator has come a long way since it was released back 3 or 4 years ago. So 9.2.0 was when it really got its first introduction, and it was a tool that was very powerful then, and it's incredible how much it's gained from a functionality perspective. So the reason why I pull this up is, when you get the recording, if you ever want to come back and say, hey, do I have access to specific tools or features or functions of the Orchestrator based on the Orchestrator Studio that I'm on? This is a good way to show it. So, from the beginning, there was orchestrations and service requests and those types of things, but you didn't have the debugger, you didn't have the easy way to run schedules, the new Orchestrator Studio interface. So this is, once again, just something for you guys if you want to come back and take a look at it to give you that information. Now, what is the Orchestrator? And, I'm assuming everyone on this call knows what it is, but I want to give at least a high level of what the base bones of it are and how people normally leverage it. So, Orchestrator is utilizing the AS server, and the way that I like to speak to it is it's a way to automate and enhance your processes. The example I always like to use is we have organizations in the past that would use custom development to do business functions, to have JDE do functions or features that weren't capable out of the box. Now you can utilize Orchestrator to build those business functions for you. Integration. So, in the past, we've had organizations where they wanted to gather data from outside sources, whether it's a Salesforce or a CAT system or a telematics, Excel, all of those things, right? And in the past, you would have to build some integration path or some middleware or use a Dell Boomi or an integration cloud. Now you can utilize Orchestrator to suck in that type of information. So it's not just a way to automate or enhance functions inside of JDE, but also to bring outside sources. And the main value you gain is you're still utilizing all of the base JD Edwards features and functions. So what I mean by that is an error code in JDE is still an error code to the orchestrator. So if I forget to put an item number in, or I put in a bad cat code, there's no coding that you need to do. It just uses that standard business data and business object processes to give you that information. So really powerful tool, and there's a lot of use cases around it. Now, just from a studio perspective, and I'll jump into the orchestrator in a minute, but these are the main components of the orchestrator. So obviously orchestrations, that's really the house that incorporates everything. So inside of that house, you know, you have all your different components like your form request, your data request, your reports. The majority of organizations that I work with, form requests, data requests, and reports are probably the top three features or components that you're ever going to utilize. You know, there are things like connectors and rules, which are powerful, and schedules, but if you get the base bones of how form requests work and how data requests work and even reports, that's going to get you a very far way. So I would specifically take some time, look at that, and make sure that you understand what each of those are. And when I jump into the studio, I'll give a little bit more background of what each of those are, but these are the key components. Now, the Orchestrator Studio is where we build all of our orchestrations out, whether it's manipulating them or creating them from scratch, or leveraging service requests that you built or form requests that you built from your process recorder. All of that is done inside of the Orchestrator Studio. So that Orchestrator Studio, once again, is kind of a base bones view of the orchestrator at a high level. These are the three use cases that we're going to be talking about specifically today. So the first one is going to be notifications in a manufacturing environment. To me, notifications are a very easy win for a lot of organizations, but they're not really used all that often. So a notification is a way to extend JD Edwards outside of your organizational login. So I don't have to be inside of JDE to get a notification. It's also a way when you're in JD Edwards to be notified if something's happening. So an example of that, a machine's down, or you have a material shortage, or hey, every Monday at 8 a.m. you need to enter in your labor and the time and entry. All of that can be done via a notification. The next one is going to be managing machine downtime. So with a lot of organizations we go into, they want to track their downtime and understand how are they doing from an operational efficiency perspective, but it's really hard for them to track when is a machine down, when is it back up, tying that to a work order from a CAM perspective. And we'll be working through a use case today that really buttons that up and makes it much easier from an end user's perspective, and all the clicks that you would normally have to do from an organizational perspective gets limited or reduced significantly. And the last one is managing material shortage. So same type of thing. Material shortages is a very easy way to shut a line down when you don't have the products that you need, whether it's a procurement issue or a cycle count issue. So the use case today is going to be understanding how you can create a notification or shortage to say, hey, I'm short of material, and then how you rectify that, whether it's generating a purchase order or generating a cycle count because you know you have the inventory, it's just not where it should be, to get you down the correct path. So use case number one, and I'm not going to stay in PowerPoint for much longer, but I wanted to give at least a framework of what we're going to be covering today. So notifications in a manufacturing environment. So there's three different types of notifications that you can do. And once I go through the three of these, I'll jump over to the studio and show you exactly how each of them work. But there is a simple notification, a watch list notification, and then an orchestration notification. So those are the three main options that you have. And the one key thing too, just to point out, is today I'm going through manufacturing use cases, right? But these tools, meaning Orchestrator and notifications, can be used across the whole system, whether it's procurement, sales, customer service, service and warranty, wherever it is inside of JDE, all of these tools that I'm talking about today can be leveraged. You know, we're just going to be going through manufacturing examples for today. So what is a simple notification? So a simple notification is just a way to set out reminders. So these are things where there's nothing really driving the action, meaning I'm not looking at to see if I have negative inventory. It's more, hey, every Monday at 8 a.m., you need to enter in your labor, or every Monday at 8 a.m., I need to make sure to check all of my schedules for the week that I don't have any material shortages, or whatever it is. It's not doing any data requests, it's not looking for any data, it's just giving you a reminder, okay? There's nothing more simple than that, right? And I think that's obviously why they got the naming of a simple notification. So please enter in expenses, enter in your labor, simple things that you need to do. Now the next one is a watch list based notification. So this is a way to where if you want to get notified when a watch list either hits a threshold, meaning it goes from critical or from non-critical to critical, or at a warning, or it changes a number, you can have JDE automatically notify you of that. And the value of this one is with watch lists, you have to get into JDE to see them, meaning I have to go into a browser, log in to see my watch list. With notifications, I can now have it send me an email when it hits a specific threshold from a watch list. Send me a text message. So it extends the capabilities outside of JDE to let me know when something's happening, right? I have a critical production shortage. What's going on? I need to know. And then the last one is an orchestration-based notification. So this is if you need to go and do updates when a notification runs, or you want to do a data request to check specific data when a notification runs. So the example here would be a negative inventory example, right? So I want the system every 5 minutes or whatever I have it from a schedule perspective to go and look to see if I have any negative inventory. So it's going to run an orchestration which does a data request and check for any items that have negative inventory. If it finds a record, it would notify me of that record, and it would also, the orchestration would also generate a cycle count. So it would generate that cycle count, and it would allow all those clicks that you normally have from a inventory control perspective go away, you know, because a lot of organizations that I go into, they have an inventory control team, which they should, but they're managing the inventory in a very basic way. You know, every day they go and look at their summary availability by branch, they sort by negative inventory, and they then have to grab all the items that are negative, go to the cycle count program, put them in, run the cycle, right? There's a lot of clicks there. There is 0 clicks with this process. All you have to do is go and do the count. So you're getting away from all of the monotonous tasks and moving into the automation tasks that you have inside of JD Edwards. So those are the 3 use cases that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to go now and jump over to JDE and show you them specifically. So let's show this. Okay, so in here I have JD, and then I also have, I'll zoom this in a little bit, the Orchestrator Studio on the other side. So we'll be walking through both of those today. Here. So I'm going to go ahead and log into JD. Okay, so when I log into JD, you know, it pulls up, I have a specific proposed page. This is a UX1 tool that, you know, we're not going to be talking about today, but very powerful. How you configure these. And up here in the top, you're going to see a little bell. So the bell is your notifications. And if you have any that are unread, it'll give you this little count here. Okay, so this is telling me, hey, you have 3 notifications that you currently haven't seen or you haven't read up to this point. And if I pop these down, you're going to see this is the 3 examples of watch list, or sorry, notification types that you have and that we talked about. So we have one, which is a negative inventory. This is an orchestration-based notification. You have this one, which is just saying, hey, you need to enter in your work order labor for the day, simple notification. And then finally, the last one is a critical production threats notification. So that's looking at my MRP messages. I'm looking for any order and expedites that I have associated to my specific line. Okay. Now with each of these, you can have all different types of data associated to them, shortcuts. So just to give you some understanding, if I click into my work order labor entry one, very simple, it's saying, hey, please enter in your work order labor entries for the day. If I were to click into my hyperlink, it brings me into my work order entries. Okay, so this is me getting in, giving just a reminder to myself, and then giving me the mechanism to go in and enter in my data. Now with my second notification, and one thing too to notice is as I read them, you'll see my number count goes down, but they do stay there. So if I want to come back and look at it, I can always do that, or I can just delete it and then that one will go away. So it's once again a good way to kind of keep a task list of what do you have to do for the day inside of this notification. Critical production threats, same type of thing. In here it's saying, hey, you have some critical production threats based on current demand levels. Please process MRP messages as required. Work with detailed messages brings me directly into those specific messages that I have associated with that order and expedite plan. Okay, so all of those are built in. And then the final one, and I'll jump into the Orchestrator Studio after this and show you kind of the back end of all of these and how you can run them and test them and do that. But the last one is a cycle count situation. So what you'll see here is it went and ran. So this is the orchestration based one. So it's going in and looking for inventory negatives and finding how many do I have that are negative. And then also it's generating a cycle count for me. Okay, so it's saying branch plan M30 has 67 items with a negative inventory. A cycle count has been created. And if I click on work with cycle counts, it brings me into that specific cycle count that I have just generated. So remember, all the clicks that I talked about before, from looking up the inventory to generating the cycle count to printing it, all of that is automated now, right? So very powerful in a way to get away from the monotonous tasks and get you into the real value-added functions. Okay, so to show you some examples of how those are created and what they look like, I'll jump into the studio. So the studio is the driver for a lot of this. Okay, inside of here, it's going to look very similar to that screenshot I showed you earlier. So all my components, my orchestrations, my notifications, how I want to run them, test them. So if I come in here and click my notifications, this is another nice little feature, and it's not until one of the new releases, but now you can categorize your, whether it's notifications or service requests or any component, to where this is a good way to kind of group everything that is associated with that specific notification or orchestration together. So you're not kind of having to look and find it in a hard way. So these are the three that I have, and just to jump through them, I'm going to show you the simple notification first. So up here at the top, the first thing you're going to do is pick your type, simple, orchestration, or watchlist, those three that I spoke about, and then you're going to build in your message. So in here, I have a specific message. Since this is a simple notification, I'm not running anything, I'm not calling an orchestration, I'm not looking at any watchlist, I'm just running this on a schedule. Okay, and that's the other key piece to bring up is notifications normally are run on a schedule. So you're going to put them on a schedule to where they run every so often, and that can be configured in all different types of ways, whether it's, you know, every minute or every hour or once every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can do all different types of things from a scheduling perspective. Now let's say I come in here and I create this simple request, and I want to see if it works. I want to make sure it gets communicated and dispatched out to the people that it should be. There's this little test button you see here, and if I click that, it's going to pop up this toggle which says, do you want to dispatch notifications? And dispatching notifications is saying, do I want to push these notifications to the JD Edwards view that you saw earlier. So if I come up here and I click execute, it'll pop up true. And if I come back to JDE, I now have my little bell. Okay, so very easy. That is the way you can go through and test your notifications. Now, if we jump back again, getting into my watch list notification, the only main difference here, I'm still giving it a body, I'm still giving it a subject, is I'm picking what watch list do I want it to be looking at. Okay, so I'm looking at the production dress watch list, and that's what's driving it to say what record counts do I want to look at when I go and have this notification run. Okay, so very simple, but the only difference is associating a watch list record to it. And then the last one, this is the most powerful, but also kind of the most complex. Since I'm just looking at branch plan M30, I have that built in, but you also see I have this $ count. So what that's saying is I want to bring in a string value. So a string value is just something that I pull from JD Edwards and have it be populated. And the value of doing it this way is I don't need to hard code in a count. I can have it go and do a record count inside of a table and pull back how many items do I have. So remember, you saw that 67 items inside of the notification, and that's how it's doing it, is it's passing that count value into my notification and displaying it as it should. And also, like you saw with the watch list notification, there is one more drop down that comes into play once we get into the orchestration notification. Then it's, once again, the same type of process. I'm just associating which orchestration to call. So not which watch list to call, but which orchestration to call. And then that will go and do all the mechanisms in the background. Like I said, checking the inventory, creating the cycle counts if you wanted to print the cycle counts and send an email out. All of that is done via that orchestration that you have built out. So notifications, very powerful, but also really easy to create. They're not all that complex, but they have the ability to add significant value. One of the key pieces, though, is once you've built out the notification, a lot of people ask, okay, I built it out, that's great. How do I apply them to people? How do I have people subscribe? How do I know who gets them? And there's really two different ways to do that. So if I click this drop down, you'll see this manage notifications, and there's two options. So there's a my subscriptions. This is if I want to go in and subscribe to something. But there's also a assigned subscription. So assigned subscriptions is fairly new. And the reasoning why that originally came out is if you didn't have the ability to assign these subscriptions to people, then every person would have to go and subscribe. And I think everyone in here recognizes that it's hard to have people in the business go and subscribe to something from an IT perspective. So what you have the ability to do is assign it to them, where it's easy, you can maintain it, you can do it at a role level, and everyone would have access to it. So you can either, once again, subscribe yourself or have a assigned subscription. But just to show you what these look like, these are all examples of my subscriptions that I have. And if I were to come in, you can do only if. So once again, remember I talked a little bit earlier about how I can do it only if a watch list changes or changes to critical or equals critical. You can specifically put in some policies that are associated to that need. And this is also where you'd put in that email of who do you want it to be sent to. So you can look at the, if you have things associated to your users and their email addresses are in there, you can have it automatically use that. But this is a way to override that if you need to. Okay, so that is our notifications. Anyone Any questions on the notification side?
Not at this time, Brian.
All right. So let's jump back here. So our next use case is going to be managing and communicating machine downtime. Okay.
Hey, Brian, we actually did get a question come in.
Okay.
The question is email the only way to have a notification defined, or can it be Slack as well, for example?
So Slack, someone would have to, what do you mean by Slack? Instant messaging. So one of the options you do have, and I'm not sure how Slack works from an architecture perspective, but Orchestrator can send notifications outbound. So if there is any type of integration, whether it's REST-based on the Slack side, you could send those in that situation. I don't know Slack well enough to speak to that, but we do have some customers, you know, whether it's Salesforce or SharePoint, you know, you can send stuff out to SharePoint from the Orchestrator. So there is options. I don't know Slack all that well though, so we need to dig a little bit deeper into that. Good question. So machine downtime management and communications, you know, they're causing delays. We need a better way to automatically route machine time, and then also let the maintenance department know when something's going on, when we have an issue. Okay, so that's kind of the use case. I'm going to go ahead and pop over back to JDE. Okay. So I'm inside of JDE, and I'm going to go to a page. So I'm going to an example of a work order scheduling app. Now, there's a lot going on here, which for all of you that have seen any sessions I've done in the past, this is that work center or shop floor view that you can build out utilizing things like form extensions and personal forms, whereas all of these buttons have orchestrations that are called when I click on them. So for today's example, we're going to be utilizing this machine down example. So I'm an end user and I have a situation to where I have a machine down. Okay, I'm there, I want to capture it. I want to make sure that I put the machine at a down status. I also want to dispatch to the maintenance department that we're having an issue and have all that be connected. So if I click on this row and I click machine down, what that's going to do is in the background go and run an orchestration. And to also, I'll get some notifications here in a second, but if you notice, there's a work order that's here right now, right? So I'm looking in Work Center 200-101. If I refresh, that work center has now been moved, okay? And the reasoning for that, if I go up to my notifications, and one thing just to make sure to kind of be clear is normally, right, these notifications would be sent to different people within an organization. Since we're doing a demo here, it's showing, I'm going to show both of them, but these would be threaded to different people. So the first one that is sent out is emergency maintenance order created. The service work order has been created for this maintenance. Please check the machine ASAP to get production back up and running. Okay, and if I click on it, this is me being a supervisor in the on the CAM team or the equipment maintenance team. It automatically created a work order for machine down for that asset. And also what it went in and did, 24707, which is my asset number, from a equipment master has been moved to a down status. So capturing that operational efficiency on the equipment side. Okay, so created my work order for the cam, flipped my machine to down, but also the next message you'll see here is asset has been flagged as down and service work order has been routed to the maintenance department. Work orders have been swung to their alternate route. So what it did automatically was it went in, changed the work order to its alternate route, and swung it over to that side. So if I were to come in here, refresh, it moved that work order right there over to the 200-103 work center. Okay, so pretty powerful. Now, some of the things, right, you would want to make sure to take into consideration is maybe the work order's in WIP. You could say, hey, if it's in WIP, don't move it. So there are rules that you can figure if you don't want to move it, or if it's within a couple of days, whatever it is. You could also say, I want to move all work orders that are this week over to their alternate. It doesn't have to just be a single work order. Just for today's example, I went in and showed you, how you could do it from a single work order perspective. So I've gone through machines down, assets down, work order has been created from a maintenance perspective, and I've swung that production work order. So if I'm a maintenance person, I would go and do the work. So I would go, let me go back into my work orders. And you can see I've added this button here, which is close order. Okay, so this is a form extension to add a button. I've associated an orchestration behind it, which closes the work order. It also updates the asset to available. So if I say I'm a machine person, I've gone in, I've added my time, I charged parts if I needed to, and now I'm going to close that order. I can click on it. It's updated my work order status to MJ. My equipment has been now changed to available. So operational efficiency, once again, is being captured. And if you want, you could also have it swing that work order back to its regular work center. Now, that once again is a decision that really can be made, but this is showing that whole workflow of the ease of associating a machine being down to routing it to a specific person. And also, let me pull up just to kind of show you. Here. I'm looking for my email. I've got so much stuff open. So in here, you'll see in my email, I've been flagged and sent emails for each of these two. So it's not just a notification, it's also being sent to me via an email. And if I were to click on this one, it gives me those hyperlinks. So that hyperlink that I went in and got to inside of JDE, also I can do inside of email. So getting it to inside of the organization, outside of the organization, if I'm a maintenance person, I would get that email on my phone. Okay, let's walk over and take a look at it. You never have to sit down to a computer and log in, right? You get to it directly on your phone and make that process much more automated. So any questions on the machine down scenario?
None at this time.
Okay. All right, so the last one for today is managing shop floor shortages, and it's more identifying the shortages, making sure people are notified, and then making the process of creating purchase orders or creating cycle counts easier for that end user. So this is the orchestration breakout, and I'm going to go and jump back into JDE to give you a little bit of a view. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these for now. So back into my screen, I have a situation to where I am short and I need to attach a shortage to my work order and route it to the procurement department. So what I'm going to do in here is go to my work order parts list. And for those of you, I'm sure you know this, but when it's bold, that means that we don't have the inventory required from a commitment perspective. So I know that there's going to be a shortage. One of the key or basic functions that you have in JDE is you can right click on any of these and go to the shortage button. And when you click on that, what it does is it creates this shortage request. Okay, so it's all it's doing is putting it in a table where you can easily view it from a buyer's perspective, right? So I'm going to go in here and say, okay, yep, I created the shortage. And that's going to kick off a few different actions. So once I create that shortage, I just got an email, but also I got this notification, okay? Now with notifications, the situations or examples I've been showing you from a hyperlink perspective have been getting to an application prior in this demonstration, but it doesn't have to stop there. So example, if I want to create a purchase order directly from this click and have it pull in the item number, the quantity, the request date, the primary supplier, all of that stuff and generate a PO for me, I can do that. Same thing with creating of a cycle count. If I know, hey, I got this material shortage, but I know I bought some of that last week. So we have it, maybe it's just someone forgot to receive it or it's in the wrong location or whatever it is. I can click create the cycle count and it'll do that for me. So this is the basic, right? Work with work order shortage. I can click on it. This is that workbench that I was talking to you about where I can track all of the shortages, be able to get in, take a look at it. But if I know, hey, okay, maybe I do need this and we've used up more than I thought, you can come in here and click create purchase order. If I refresh. I've got another notification. And once again, this would be going back to the person that put in the shortage request. But I can click on it and say, it'll show me purchase order created for item number 2011 shortage, PO order number 7852. I can click on it. Brings me directly into it for my quantity short. It went and grabbed my primary supplier that I bought it from. So all those clicks that you would need to do from a procurement perspective have just gone away. Same thing from a cycle count. So all I would do is come in, say quick cycle count, and it would run that for me and create the cycle count. So automating your process, allowing your end users to not worry about getting in, clicking this, clicking that, but moving you in a more automated way. Now, going into the Orchestrator Studio, I'll show you some background of what each of them are doing to give you a little bit of a view. So we'll do the material shortage one first. And I don't want that one, I want this one. So and this is another great example, once again, of utilizing that category field, because I'm grouping all of the orchestrations that I use inside of this category field around material shortage. So I have 3 orchestrations that are associated to this use case. So I have the first one, which is notifying me when there's a shortage. The second one, which is when I click that create PO button. And then the third one is when I click the create cycle count button. Okay, so those are the 3 orchestrations that I have associated to this process. And the first one is as simple as I said. It's a notification that I'm calling whenever I click the OK button inside of that work order shortages. And if I come in here and I can show you, this is a simple notification, but I've associated 2 orchestrations to that. So those hyperlinks that I showed you, those are this. So I have links that I've added that are orchestration links. I'm passing in all of the values that I have. So item number, quantity, order number, cycle count. I'm passing in item number and branch to where whenever I click that notification, it's passing that data from the fields that I have inside of my first orchestration to the secondary orchestration. So this is my driver for this use case. Now, depending on if you're creating your cycle count or generating a purchase order, you're either going to be running this orchestration or running your cycle count orchestration. So if I were to click into my PO shortages, there's a couple of things that I'm doing here. The first one I'm doing is I'm defining that primary supplier. So this is a data request where I'm going in and defining based on my item number and my branch, what is my primary supplier associated to it. So I'm passing in item number, I'm passing in business unit or branch, and I'm returning primary supplier. So primary supplier is one of the values that I obviously need to generate a purchase order. Once I've got that, I have all the other information that I need from the shortage. I have the item number, I have the quantity, I have the date I need it by. And if I come into this, so this is a form request where I'm going into a form and generating a process. So this is, as you can see, what would happen from an end user's perspective. So I click the add button, then I'm passing in my supplier that I got from my data request. Then I'm passing in my item number, quantity, and work order number that I got from my shortage. And then I'm clicking the save button, and that's it. So a form request is me going into a form like an end user would and building out the steps that I need. And then finally, I'm sending out that notification. So that notification that I got saying, hey, you have a PO that's been created, and with the string value. So if I come in here, you'll see I have these string values, item number, purchase order number, that get passed in every single time that I run this orchestration. So it will automatically update based on whatever the values are inside of it. Now I said, you know, I run this orchestration every time I do a click or OK inside of JDE. And to show you how that works, if I go back into my shortages, so there's this button here you see that says form extension. I'm going to click on that and open it up. So take a second. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in here, but for today's example, I'm going to show you how you can associate orchestrations to clicks, whether it's a click of the OK button or the click of the delete button or a tab or whatever it is. So in here, I click this associate orchestrations, and what you're going to notice is that work order material shortage orchestration I just showed you, I have associated that to a click. So if I come in here, you'll see whenever I click the OK button, I want to run this orchestration. And I want to pull back these values into that orchestration to use them when I'm generating the PO, when I'm generating the cycle count. And then I can obviously do execution around running it synchronously, hiding the error. But this click is unbelievably powerful. So any click you do inside of JDE, you can associate an orchestration behind it. So that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where those quote unquote business functions that you've always had to build in the past with custom code and makes it hard to upgrade, that goes away. you can now do that with base orchestrations. And if I were to come back in here to show you, I won't build one out, but I can click any event. So if I click on this select control, I can click on something like this and say, when I enter this control, when I exit this control. So a control is this field, same type of thing. When I click the OK button, when I click the close button, all of those can be triggers for running an orchestration in the background. Okay, so orchestrations really are run or triggered two different ways, with a click, like you see here, or on a schedule. So I normally recommend doing it as much as you can on clicks, because that's a real-time run where you don't have to wait 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or make sure that you caught it in the right period of time.
Brian, we do have a question.
Sure.
What is the impact on performance with the number of possibilities to activate automated processes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's something that gets brought up everywhere that we go. So we try and make sure that some of the clicks and data requests that you're running, aren't across the whole F1911, for example, or across the whole item master if you have millions of items. So we try and constrict that at times with rules and different checkboxes that will facilitate that from a performance perspective. So the one comment though I will make is we've never had a customer not use Orchestrator because of performance, because what we can do is scale, whether it's the architecture from a server perspective, or scale the orchestrations to make sure that we're not putting a crazy load on JD. A lot of people have a similar thought process when it comes to Watchlist, just because, those run across a lot of tables and they pull in a lot of data, but same scenario. As long as your architecture is in check and we test this, we don't have anyone that has issues with it.
Thanks.
Good question. So right now, that's really so I want to leave at least 10 minutes for some comments or questions. So that was the goal for today, and showing you once again those 3 use cases around manufacturing. So notifications, your downtime, and then shortages. What I'll say is there's unbelievable opportunity outside of that, and that's the beauty of the Orchestrator, is you can let your imagination kind of run free and help to automate very company-specific needs without doing mods, because in the past, once again, to do a business process that is very specific to your industry or your customer or your company, you have to mod JDE. But now you can utilize Orchestrator to help facilitate and augment the base functionality with Orchestrator, and still are able to easily take upgrades. And as you do upgrade, all of these come with it. So you get rid of that risk that you normally have from an organizational perspective. So I'll stop there. Anyone, any questions that they haven't asked so far?
Looks like there was another question that came in. It says, how does debugging work?
So great. So good question. So I can kind of show you real quick. So we have Orchestrator, and debugger is something that's fairly new. Now there is a debugging, meaning kind of managing failures inside of Orchestrator that you can use ahead of that. So that is this orchestration monitor. So I'll pull this up real quick, and if you haven't seen this before, just to give you a little bit of a view. Normally the way that I like to leverage or speak to this is orchestration monitor should be if you're monitoring things in production, meaning you want to monitor failures, what's happening, but this isn't where you monitor when you're testing. There's ways inside the studio, I'll show you in a second, to monitor that. So if I come in here to health, I can see, it'll take a second just because we have some runs. I can see, you know, failures, what have been successful, exceptions. So if I come in here too, I can look at this at a chart level and see, hey, where am I having the majority of my issues? And these are orchestrations, right? So these are all the orchestrations. If I come into the list, I can also see what is my input JSON, what's my exception message. So let's pull up one that has an exception message. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me have it. So I'm not finding any with an exception message right now, but what that's going to tell you is what was the failure that happened, right, from a exception. So examples of that: incorrect cat code, or expecting form A got form B. Those are exceptions that normally pop up. Now, once again, that's really if you're managing or monitoring it from a perspective of production. Inside of the Orchestrator Studio, there's a new debugger tool as well. And I don't have a work order specifically set up for today, but I'll just show you kind of the situation. Go. So I'll pull up the work order. So inside, when you run these orchestrations, if you do have a failure, so I'm going to go to the order number, and I can click this debug. So this lets me step through each of the pieces of that orchestration. So I can tell exactly where that failure happened from a debug. So I can come up here and say step forward, and it's pulling back the data as each of them run. So this first one is a grabbing data from a business function. So I'm grabbing the time. Next one, you can see it's running, and it's going to keep stepping you through all of those steps until you hit a failure, right? So I'm not going to have any failures today, so you wouldn't be able to see that, but that is how you would be able to pass in or find any issues that you have from that debugger. So debugger is really nice, because in the past you really had to kind of, okay, I think it happened here, let's go in and take a look at that step in the orchestration, whereas now it will show you that failure. Good question.
All right, it looks like we have another question. Does Orchestrator have new permissions to enable access for development?
New permissions to access. I'm not sure I understand the question. So permissions for the orchestrator is the same as permissions for any other UDO. So it's inside of the UDO workbench where you define, example, if I'm a developer, I may have access to create orchestrations, whereas I may not have access to create grids for an example purpose. So all UDO security is done through, or all UX1, which Orchestrator is a part of UX1, security is done through the UDO standard security workbench.
Looks like we have one more question. Do you control what user orchestrations run as?
Say that again, Kisha.
Do you control what user orchestrations run as?
From a username. So once again, I don't know the exact.
Okay, well, we'll get back with them.
Background in that question, but when you run it, it's going to have your user ID on it. So from an updates perspective, and also security-wise, that's a good question too. Is Orchestrator uses the same security that if I was an end user. So if I don't have access to creating a journal entry or processing a payment, I wouldn't be able to do it in the Orchestrator as well. It utilizes all that same security. Anything else?
How do we use business functions in Orchestrator?
Good question. So business functions, in the past, what you'd have to do with your Orchestrator to hit a business function is create a 55 app, which really just was kind of a pass-through to get to the business function. Now, inside of the Orchestrator, you can go to this custom requests, and one of the options that you have, as you can see here, is Groovy, Java, or business function. So here's an example of a business function call. So what you do is you put in the business function name, and this is the one that I just showed from an example perspective, and it's pulling back these values. So all you do is put in the business function, pass in the values, and then you're able to hit them directly. So that's one of those things too that is powerful from a speed perspective. So normally if you're hitting the business function versus going through a form, if from a performance perspective, it'll be a lot faster and would take less load on your architecture.
All right, looks like we have one more question. If you create a REST endpoint or run on a schedule, what user does it run as?
Depending on who hits it. So when you hit it as a REST endpoint, you need to pass in an authentication, right? So when you're passing it in, depending on what user you pass in, that's when it runs as.
That looks like all the questions we have right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for the time. Once again, the main driver for this is we had some technical issues in the in focus section. So hopefully this answered some of your questions, gave you some ideas of use cases that you can leverage or pieces of it for your organization. If you do have any questions or anything you want to ask directly, feel free to email me, brose@trillium.com. And once again, thanks for your time and have a good rest of your day.